Hello and welcome back to our middle grade book club. I'm Emily from the Bowen branch. We are working our way through Maggie Stiefvvater's The Scorpio Races, and we are reading chapters 13 through 17 today. We hope you've been enjoying it so far. We get to do this with huge thanks to Scholastic for opening up and allowing us to use their books for digital book clubs, online book clubs, just like this one. Hope you enjoy chapter 13 through 17. Sean. I stand in a round pen in the Malvern yard with an American at my elbow, both of us watching Corr trot around us. It's a pale blue morning that needs time to become pleasant. I was intending to spend it on the beach before everyone else got there, but Malvern caught me and pressed the buyer onto me before I could get clear. I didn't think taking a stranger to the beach was a good idea. So I headed to the round pen to school until my visitor got bored. The rule requiring the cobble to train on the shore only counts if they're under saddle, something I always take advantage of. There's not much that can be done in a round pen that will prepare you for life on the beaches. Already, Corr has been going in circles at the end of the lunge line for 20 minutes. The American is enthusiastic but reverent, more awed by me, I think, than Corr. Our accents make us cautious with each other. Quite a remarkable structure. This was built just for the Kabelushka? He asks. He's very careful with the last words, but his pronunciation is good. Kabelushka. I nod. On the other side of the stables is the round pen that I exercise the sport horses in, 16 yards across with high fence-like walls built of light metal tubing. Corr wouldn't tolerate the metal for very long, and even if he did, everyone is too afraid to put a Kabelushka in something that looks like it would blow away. So instead, we're in this fearfully wondrous pen that Malvern devised some time before I arrived, dug 8 feet into the side of a hill so that the earth makes a solid wall around it. The only entrance is a high dirt-walled path ending at an oak door that serves as part of the pen's wall. I like it well enough, except for when it floods. Kabelushka? Kabelushka. The American frowns now, doubting his usage. Kapel is plural. Kapal is singular. Roger. It's never sure if it's raining here or not, is it? Asks the American. He's very handsome, in his late 30s, wearing a navy flat cap, a white V-neck sweater, and slacks that won't stay that pressed for long in this humidity. The sky spits at us, but it's not really rain. It'll be gone before I head down to the beach with the others. How long will you trot him out? Corr is already annoyed with the gait. My father once said that no water horse was meant to trot. Any horse has 4 natural gaits: walk, trot, canter, gallop. But there's no reason for one to be preferable over another. But Corr would sooner gallop until he's lathered like the surf than trot for half the time. My mother once said that I hadn't been built to trot either, and that's true too. It's too slow to be exciting, too jolting to be comfortable. I'm perfectly content to let Corr do it on his own right now, without me on his back. At the moment, he can tell that he's being watched by a stranger, however, so he picks his feet up and tosses his mane just a little more than usual. I allow him his show. There are worse flaws than vanity in a horse. The American's still looking at me, so I reply, just taking the edge off. The beach will be crowded again today, and I don't want to bring 3 fresh horses down there. Well, he's a beauty, the American said. It's meant to flatter me, and it does. He adds, I see by your smile you already know. I didn't think I was smiling, but I did already know. I'm George Holly, by the way, the American says. I'd shake your hand if it wasn't occupied. Sean Kendrick. I know. You're why I came. They said it wasn't a race unless you were in it. My mouth quirks. Malvern said you had your eye on some yearlings? Well, I came for them, too. Holly wipes the mist from his eyebrows, but I could have sent my agent for them. How many times have you won? 4. 4! You're the man to beat. A national treasure. Regional treasure, perhaps? Does Thisbe have home rule? Why don't you race on the mainland? Or maybe you do and I've missed it. We get your news slowly, you know. George Holly didn't know it, but I had been to the mainland once with my father for one of the races there. It was vests and flat caps and bowlers and canes, horses in snaffle bits and jockeys in silks, and a track contained by a white rail, and wives who looked like dolls. The benevolent hills stretched gently on either side of the stands. The sun had shone, the bets had been cast, the favourite won by 2 lengths. We came home and I'd never gone back. I'm no jockey, I say. Corr starts to come in towards us, and I push him back out to the wall with a flick of my stick. The stick isn't long enough to touch him, but it's got a length of red leather fixed to the end, and it snaps to remind him of his place. Me neither, Holly announces broadly, pushing his hands in his pockets like a boy. He rotates on his heel as I turn, watching Corr circle around us. Just a horse lover. Now that he's said his name, I know exactly who he is. I've not met him before, but I know his agent, who comes over each year to import a yearling or three. Holly's the American equivalent of Malvern, the owner of a massive breeding farm known for show jumpers and hunters, wealthy and eccentric enough to come all the way to Thisbe for a chance to improve his stock. Horse lover is a stark understatement, albeit one that makes me like him better. And Malvern has me babysitting him. I should be flattered, but still I'm wondering how difficult it will be to hand him off in order to get down to the beaches. Do you think Benjamin Malvern would part with this beast? Holly asks. He's watching Corr's tireless stride and imagining it, I think, on his home soil. My breath's uncertain. For the first time I'm relieved by the answer to that question, though it's caused me sleepless nights before. Malvern won't sell his water horses to anyone? Also, it's illegal to transport the kabalushka from the island, but that doesn't seem like something that would stop someone like Holly. If he were a horse, I think I'd have to trot him around this round pen for a long time to take the edge off. Perhaps he hasn't been offered the right price. My fingers tighten on the lunge line, enough that Corr feels the tension and flicks an ear toward me, always sensitive to my mood. He's had good offers? At least one very good offer. Everything I had saved over the years, everything from my share of the winnings. I could buy 10 of Malvern's yearlings, 10 of any of his other horses, just not the one I want. I expect you'd be the one to know, Holly says. Sometimes it's not money they're looking for. He doesn't sound upset, a man so used to both buying horses and being refused them that neither scenario surprises him. I sure do like the look of him. Malvern horses. Shit. He's so clearly delighted by it all that it's hard to fault him. I ask, how long are you here? I'm on the ferry the day after the race, with whatever Benjamin Malvern has convinced me I can't live without. Want to join me? I could use a boy like you. Not a jockey, but a whatever you call yourself. I allow him a thin smile that reveals the impossibility of this. I see how it is, Holly replied. He gestures his chin towards Corr. Can I hold him for a moment? Will he let me? He's so polite about it that I hand him the lunge line and my stick. Holly takes them delicately, his feet automatically moving apart to give him a better base of support. The stick rests lightly in his right hand, an extension of his arm. The man must have lunged hundreds of horses. Still, Corr immediately tests him. He tosses his head up and moves in, and Holly has to flick the stick at once. Corr keeps pushing inward. Snap, I say. I'm ready to take him back if I must. It has to snap? Holly flicks the stick again, this time hard enough to audibly snap the leather, and Corr twists his head, more conciliatory than ill-tempered, before trotting back out to the wall. Holly's smile is broad and pleased. How long has it taken you to get him like this? 6 years. Could you do this with the other 2 mares I saw? I had tried the lunge line, in fact, with the pure bay mare, and though it hadn't been a disaster, it hadn't been pretty either. Surely I wouldn't have wanted Holly or anyone else with me in the round pen that day. I'm not entirely certain that 6 years with either of the mares would end up the same way that 6 years with Corr has. I'm not sure, after all this time, if it's because he understands me better than they do, or merely because I understand him better than them. Who taught you this? Surely not Malvern. Holly glances at me. In that brief moment of distraction, the bare second it takes for Holly to look toward me, Corr surges away from the wall towards us, swift and soundless. I don't wait for Holly to react. I snatch the stick from his hand and jump to meet Corr, pressing the tip of the stick into his shoulder. Corr rises up, away from the pressure of it, but I follow him. As he rears, I lay the red leather against his cheek, daring him to test me as he has tested Holly. We've played this game before, and we both know the outcome. Corr drops to the ground. Holly lifts his eyebrows. He hands me the lunge line and wipes his palms on his slacks. First time behind the wheel. At least I didn't wrap her around a tree. He's not at all fazed. Welcome to Thisbe, I say. Chapter 14. Puck. After Peg Grattan leaves, Finn and I pack up to go into Skarmouth. I find this pretty disagreeable, being once again denied the proud, lonely entrance on Dove, but we need to bring all of the teapots into town, and the Morris won't start. So, in the most discouraging turn of events so far, I have to hitch Dove up to our little cart. My future embarrassment makes me cross, and I make a lot of noise while loading up the pottery. I have a sudden thought. How are you going to get the cart back home? I ask Finn, who is working on carefully aligning the boxes in the cart so the corners match perfectly. His side of the packing looks like he is laying bricks, but it's taking him a long time. I don't care if the largest boxes go on the bottom or the top, so long as they aren't going to crash around. I'm taking Dove down to the beach, and the cart is not going down there. I'll bring it back myself, Finn says pleasantly. He feathers 2 of his fingers on the edge of a box in order to move it the distance of a butterfly's breath. Yourself? Sure, Finn says. It'll be empty then. I get a momentary image of my brother trudging out of Scarmouth with a pony cart behind him, an emaciated troll in a giant sweater, and I wish that I too could disappear to the mainland where no one knew my name. But it's that or get to the beach after the tide has come up. The mist is still clinging to us, but it's starting to brighten, reminding me of time passing. Maybe Dory will let us leave it behind the shop, I say. I'll pick it back up with Dove when I'm done. Finn scratches Dove's rump with one finger, which makes her stamp her back hoof like he's a fly. He says, Dove says she doesn't want to pull a cart after you make her run away from sea monsters. Dove says you'll look like an idiot pulling a pony cart. He smiles vaguely down at his stack of pottery boxes. I don't mind. Obviously, I snap. We haven't come to an agreement by the time we load up, but there's no more time, so off we go, me leading Dove and Finn trailing behind. Puffin the cat follows us for a while, with Finn shooing at her, which only makes her longing to join us more intense. Partway into town, I smell something like rotten meat on the wind, and Finn and I exchange glances. The island is no stranger to terrible smells. Storms throw up great fish onto the beaches to rot. Fishermen's spoils go bad on warm days. A cross-eyed wind brings the smell of brine and wet things in the evening. But this is not a sea smell. Something's died that shouldn't have and been left where it shouldn't have been left. I don't want to stop, but it could be a person, so I make Finn stand by Dove's head as I climb up over the stone wall in the direction of the scent. The wind is coming straight toward me. The wind manages to cut through the mist instead of pushing it out of the way, and I crumple over myself to stay warm as I step around sheep poo. All the while I am wishing that I could have sent Finn to investigate the smell, but he's queasy and useless with blood, so I am the lucky one to discover the source, which is a pile of parts that used to be a sheep. There's not much left but hooves, a bob of its short tail, a lump of its innards, which is what smells, and its furry skull, which is mangled and crushed around the eye socket. What's left of the wool at the back of the neck is spray-painted blue to mark it as one of Hammond's flocks. There isn't much back of the neck left to be painted, though. My skin prickles in an automatic tickle of fear, though I doubt that the Kabalushka responsible is anywhere near. Still, this is far inland for one of the horses to come. I turn to Finn and Dove. They're playing a game that seems to involve him tapping Dove on the upper lip and Dove looking peevish. Finn looks up and I say, Sheep? He says, I knew it was a sheep. I reply, next time you can cast your seeing eye into the pasture before I walk through the mud. You didn't ask. And we start on again towards Scarmouth. We're heading toward Dory Maud's shop, which is called Fathom & Sons for no reason that I can imagine, as Dory has no sons, and no husband for that matter. She lives with her two sisters, neither of whom are named Fathom or have sons, and she collects things year-round to sell to tourists during October and November. As a child, the chief thing I noticed about Dory was that she was always wearing a different pair of shoes, a strange and extravagant thing on the island. Now, mostly what I notice about her is that she and her sisters have no last name, a strange and extravagant thing just about anywhere. Fathom & Sons is down one of the little side streets in Scarmouth, a stone-lined track barely wide enough for Dove and her pony cart. Neither the mist nor the sun can reach inside this alley, and we shiver as Dove's hoofsteps clatter and echo up the sides of the building. Standing in the blue morning shadows a few doors down is Jonathan Carroll, showing pieces of a biscuit at a collie. Both Carroll brothers have dark curly hair, but one of them has a lump of uncooked dough for a brain, and the other has a lump of uncooked dough for his lungs. Once, when I came into town with Mum, we ran across Brian, the one with dough for lungs, crouched by the quay, shaking and starving for air. Mum had told him to breathe all the bad air out before he tried to get more in, and then she'd left me watching him while she went to buy him a black coffee. I'd been very annoyed because she'd promised me one of Paulson's cinnamon twists, which sold out very quickly. I'm a bit ashamed to recall that if I told Brian that if he died and kept me from my cinnamon twist, I'd spit on his grave. I don't know if he remembers it at all, since he'd seemed very focused on breathing through a cup made of his hands. I hope he doesn't, because my character's improved a lot since then. Nowadays I would have only thought the spitting part instead of saying it to his face. But, regardless, it's not Brian, but Jonathan who's throwing biscuits. He looks at me and Dove and Finn and says merely, "Hi, pony," which confirms that he's the one with dough for brains. "Wait here," I tell Finn. "Start unloading. I'll see about the cart." Fathom & Sons is a narrow, dark corridor of a shop, stuffed like a Cornish hen, with odds and ends labelled with little price tags that glow like white teeth in the dim light. It always smells a little like butter browning in a pan. So, like heaven. I'm not sure how many customers actually come into the shop itself to buy things. I think most of the business is done under a tent on weekends and during the rush for the races, so both the price tags and the delicious butter smell are probably unnecessary for most of the year. Today is no exception. I take a deep, slightly hungry breath as I open the door. Inside the shop, the sisters are fighting, as usual. I have no sooner gotten inside the doorway and into the dim clutter than Dory Maud thrusts a catalogue into my hands. "There," she says, "that. You'd buy from that, wouldn't you, Puck?" The sisters call me Puck instead of Kate, because all three of the sisters agree that you should be called what you want to be called, instead of simply falling into what you were given at birth. I don't remember ever telling them I wanted to be called Puck instead of Kate. Both of them are my names, but still, I don't mind it. "She's got no money at all," Elizabeth says dismissively from the stairs at the back of the shop. The stairs leading up to the second story, which the sisters share. I've never been up there, and I harbour a secret wish to. I think it must all be shoes and beds and butter. Elizabeth continues, "Of course it's going to look good to her." I glance at what Dory Maud has thrust into my hand. To my surprise, it's a neatly printed catalogue for Fathom and Sons. When I tip my hands, it falls open to a random page with stylish black and white illustrations of a woman in a knitted sweater, and a pair of hands wearing crocheted gloves, and a disembodied neck bearing one of the rock cross necklaces that tourists love. The tidy letters describe each in uncompromising detail, while a banner declares, "Seize your heritage, stretch your penny with fashion that lasts." It looks like a real catalogue that the postboat brings, only it has all the things from the store in it. My bad mood melts away. "This is amazing," I say. I move slightly so the dusty, antique fertility statue by the door will stop poking my shoulder with her stone fingers. She's been for sale for a long time. "How did you do it? Look at the letters. They're so perfect." "Mr. Davidge, the printer, did that," Dory Maud replied, pleased, looking over my other shoulder. "Because Dory Maud did Mr. Davidge," Elizabeth says from the stairs. She's still wearing her nightgown, and her invented curls are 2 days old. "Oh, go on back to bed," Dory replies without heat. I don't want to think much on this. Dory is what Mum used to call a strong-looking woman, which meant that from the back she looked like a man, and from the front you preferred the back. Elizabeth is the pretty sister, with long straw-coloured hair and a nose turned up by lineage and habit. No one notices what the third sister Annie looks like because she's blind. I page through the catalogue. I know that I'm being stalled, but I discover that I'm rather happy to be stalled. Are our teapots in here? Who will see this? "Oh, the 3 people who read the adverts at the end of the post," Elizabeth says. She's gone up 2 more stairs, but is far from the back in bed. "And who are willing to wait a few years for shipping?" "The post! On the mainland!" I exclaim. I've found our teapots. There is a very precise line drawing of one of the stout pots with my utilitarian thistles on the side of it, and now I can see that the illustrations are in the same hand that draws the adverts in the back of our own little Scarmouth newspaper that comes out each Wednesday. The printing says that the teapot pictured is a representative design, and that supplies are limited. It also says they are signed and numbered, which my teapots are not. It is strange to think of something of mine heading over to the ocean without me. I point to the signed bit and ask, "What's this?" Dory Maud reads the description. "That makes them more valuable. It won't take you but a moment to sign and number them. Come in and have tea. Elizabeth will stop grousing. Where is your brother?" "Can't say," I say regretfully. "I need to take Dove to the beach. Do you think Finn can leave the cart behind the shop when he's done unloading?" I run all the words together to avoid being asked about it, but the sisters aren't paying any attention, so I needn't have bothered. Dory Maud has opened the door and found Finn standing there holding Puffin, who has followed us all the way to Scarmouth after all. "I hope you enjoyed the taste of poverty in your bowl," Elizabeth is saying. "The price of that advert is dear enough, but have you thought of what it will cost to ship those catalogues out to mainland wives?" Dory Maud says, "They pay for the catalogue. It says that right in the advertisement that I showed you not an hour ago. If you didn't have shingles for eyes, you might have seen it. Finn Connolly, come in here. Why do you have that cat? Is she for sale as well? Has it come to that?" Finn says, "No, ma'am," as he enters the shop, where he gets poked directly in the chest by the fertility goddess. I move a step backward so he can get away, because the last thing I need is for Finn to suddenly decide to become fertile. "I really have to go," I say. I don't want to seem rude. "Where are you going again?" Dory Maud asks me. "Perhaps I should ring Mr. Davidge too," Elizabeth says from the stairs. "Then I might not mind the bills either. How is it done, sister? Mr. Davidge, will you set my type?" Dory Maud turns to her and thunders pleasantly, "Shut up, you cow!" Finn here wears his wide-eyed expression. So does Puffin. Dory Maud seizes his arm with great enthusiasm and begins to propel him toward the back of the shop where the teapot waits. "Bye," I whisper to him. I feel a little bad about abandoning him to their clutches, but at least he'll get tea out of it. I let the door close behind me. Dove, patiently waiting by the door, looks up as I step out. Finn has unfastened the cart, but she still wears her harness. She doesn't look much like a racehorse. I pull my hair back into a new ponytail. 2 or 3 dozen strands had already begun to escape. I probably don't look much like a jockey either. Chapter 15. Sean. There's a girl on the beach. The wind's torn the mist to shreds here by the ocean, so unlike on the rest of the island, the horses and their riders appear in sharp relief down on the sand. I can see the buckle on every bridle, the tassel on every rein, the tremor in every hand. It is the 2nd day of training, and it's the first day that isn't a game. The first week of training is an elaborate bloody dance where the dance partners determine how strong the other ones are. It's when riders learn if charms will work on their mounts, how close to the sea is too close, how they can begin to convince their water horses to gallop in a straight line, how long they have between falling from their horses and being attacked. This tense courtship looks nothing like racing. At first I see nothing out of the ordinary. There is the surviving privet brother beating his grey couple with the switch, and Hale selling charms that will not save you, and there is Tommy Falk flapping at the end of the lead as his black mare strains for the salt water. And there is the girl. When I first see her and her dun mare from my vantage point on the cliffed road, I am struck first not by the fact that she is a girl, but by the fact that she's in the ocean. It's the dreaded 2nd day, the day when people start to die, and no one will get that close to the surf. But there she is, trotting up to the knee in the water, fearless. I make my slow way down the cliff road to the sand. Any wicked thoughts Corr might have had this morning have been jolted out by his trot earlier, but the 2 mares are neither as tired nor as tame as Corr. Their hooves jangle every time they dance sideways. I've tied bells around their pasterns, reminding me every moment that I cannot let down my guard. The worst of the 2 mares wears a black netted cloth over her haunches. The cloth, passed down from my father, is made of thread and hundreds of narrow iron eyelets, part morning cloth, part chainmail. I hope it weighs her to the ground. It's the sort of thing I'd never use on Corr. It would only make him irritable and uncertain, and in any case we know each other better than that. Now, closer to the surf, I see why the girl's so brave. Her horse is just an island pony, with a coat the colour of the sand, legs black as soaked kelp. I see from her belly that the poor Thisbe grass has stuffed her, but not fed her. I want to know why she's on my beach, and I want to know why no one's confronting her. All of the horses are aware of her, though, ears pricked, necks arched, lips curling up in her direction, and of course there's the piebald mare among them, wailing her hunger and desire. I should have known Gory wouldn't let her go. At the sound of the piebald couple, the dun island mare lays her ears back to her neck with fear. She knows that she's a meal here, that the sound the piebald makes is a plea for her death. The girl leans and pats the dun's neck, soothing her. Reluctantly, I go about my business. My mouth tastes of salt, and the wind finds me wherever I lead the horses. Today is one of those days where no one will get warm. I find a crevice in the cliffs, a giant's axe mark, and lead the mares and Corr into it. The wind makes a muted scream at the apex of the crevice, like someone dying out of sight. I draw a circle into the sand and spit into it. Corr watches me. The mares watch the ocean. I watch the girl. My thoughts turn the mystery of her presence over and over as I flip open my leather bag and remove the wax paper bundle I put in there earlier. I toss the bits of meat into the circle, but the mares don't touch them. They're watching the pony and the girl in the ocean. A more interesting meal. With the bag over my shoulder, I return to the mouth of the crevice and cross my arms, waiting for a gap in the murder of horses and men to open so I can see the mare and girl again. There's nothing special about the mare, nothing at all. A fine enough head, good enough bone. As a pony, she is a beauty. As a kabelushka, she is nothing. The girl, too, is nothing special. Slight, with a ginger ponytail. She looks less afraid than her mare, but she's in more danger. I hear one of my mares scream, and I turn long enough to flip open my bag and throw a handful of salt in her direction. She jerks her head up as some of it sprinkles her face. She's offended, but not hurt. I look her in the eye long enough that she knows there's more where that came from. She's a bay, no white markings on her anywhere, which is supposed to speak to her speed, but I've yet to get her going in a straight enough line to find out. I turn back to the ocean and the wind throws sand in my face, hard enough to offend, but not to hurt. I smile a thin smile at the irony and turn up my collar. The girl circles her pony through the water again. I have to appreciate that she's chosen the only place she can be sure that no one will approach her today. Of course, it's not just the kabelushka on the beach the girl has to worry about, but I can tell that she's already considered that. She glances toward the curve of the incoming surf every so often. I can't imagine that she'd be able to see a hunting kabelushka. When they swim parallel to the breakers, fast and dark beneath the surface, they're almost impossible to see, but I also can't imagine not looking. Somewhere close by, a man is moaning. He's been trampled or thrown or bitten. He sounds resentful or surprised. Did no one tell him that pain lives in this sand, dug in and watered with our blood? I watch the girl's hands on the reins, the certainty of her seat. She can ride, but so can everyone on Thisbe. "I'll bet you haven't seen that before," says Gorry's gritty voice. "Their clothes don't come off with your eyes, Sean Kendrick." I glance at him just long enough to see that he still has the piebald mare, and then a second longer so that he sees that I am looking at how he still has the piebald mare, and then I look back to the ocean. There is a knot of fighting horses in front of us, growling and pawing like tomcats. Bells ring sharply. Every water horse on this beach is hungry for the sea, hungry for the chase. I glance at the piebald mare again. Gorry's knotted her halter with copper wire, which does nothing but look impressive. "She's entered in the races," Gorry says. He's smoking, and he gestures towards the girl in the surf with his cigarette. "On that pony, that's what they're saying." The smell of his cigarette stings worse than the wind. She means to race on that pony. She'll be dead in a week. The piebald mare paws at the sand. I see her digging out of the corner of my eye and hear her grinding her teeth. That bridles her curse, this island her prison. She still smells of rot. "I can't sell this mare. Thanks for that," Gorry says. "Your expert opinion." I don't know what to tell him. When you traffic in monsters, that's the risk you run, that you'll find one too monstrous to stomach. Bells jangle again, and I look away from the beach, trying to find the sound with my eyes. It is not my mares, it's not the piebald, it's just one horse in a throng of horses, but there's a sharp urgency to the sound that calls to me. Danger sings on the breeze, throwing echoes off the sheer white cliffs. There are too many people on horseback today trying to prove themselves, trying to prepare, trying to get faster. They haven't discovered yet that it's not the fastest who make it to race day. You only have to be the fastest of those who are left. Suddenly there's a shout and a terrible screaming whinny, and I turn in time to see Jimmy Blackwell throwing himself from his white-grey stallion as it leaps into the pounding waves. Blackwell rolls narrowly out of the way of another pair of spooking Ushka mares. He's older, defter. He's survived half a dozen Scorpio races. "And you thought this mare would be trouble," Gorry says. He laughs. I'm listening, but I'm watching too. Blackwell is still pulling himself clear of the rioting mares. It's just a petty disagreement between two savage horses, but they're all teeth and hooves. One of the men tries to tear them apart, but he's too cavalier. There's a snap of blunt teeth, and just like that, his fingers are gone. Someone shouts, "Hey!" but nothing else, moved by the need to speak, but having nothing else to say. My eyes flick beyond them all to the water where Blackwell's stallion half leaps, half swims, the water frothing white beneath him. His eyes are on that Dun Island pony and the girl on her back. I hear a wail, and at first I think it's a scream, but then I hear my name. "Where's Kendrick?" Someone is about to die. I set my bag down by the cliffs out of the way, and I begin to run, heels digging deep into the sand. I can only be in one place at a time, and the fight on the beach is out of my control. In the surf, the dun pony is chest deep in the water, and the white stallion rears before her, hooves slicing down toward the girl. The girl jerks the dun mare off balance, sparing them both from the hooves, but delivering the girl into the frigid water. And that was what the kabelushka, a fearful, dull Pegasus with disintegrating wings of sea foam, wanted. His teeth flash, the colour of dead coral, and his great head smashes against the girl as her head comes up above water. Teeth clamp onto her hooded sweater, legs kick in preparation for his dive. I am already in the water, my fingers numb with the cold, and I swim to him through this perilous water, my progress agonizingly slow. The girl keeps going below water and clawing herself back up. I draw myself closer with the floating hairs of his tail. I straddle his back and grab a handful of mane as I make my way up his neck. There is no time to trace the outlines of his veins with iron or push him widdershins. He is beyond anything I could whisper in his ear. There is only time for me to grip a handful of death-red holly berries from my coat pocket and to press them into his flared nostrils. His massive legs slash convulsively through the water, and I see one of his knees glance off the girl's head. I can't see if she stays above water, though, because now the stallion is snorting seaweed and jelly and bits of coral all spewing from his nostrils around the red berries, and in his drowning and his death throes, it's taking all my energy to keep from going underwater with him. The stallion's jaw swings towards me, wide open, and I see, in a suddenly frozen moment of time, the coarseness of the hairs on his jaw and the way that salt water has beaded along them. My vision explodes into 1,000 colors, not one of them the sky. And then, in a rush of sound, my sight returns, and with it sensation, the girl's hand pulling my head above water and the sting of the ocean in my nostrils. The white cobble is nothing but his mane floating in the water, the surf kicking his corpse toward the beach. The dun pony stands on the sand and whinnies to the girl, a high, anxious sound. There's blood in the water, and blood there on the sand, too, where the man lost his fingers. They are still calling my name on the beach, though I can't tell if it's to solicit my help or to solicit help for me. The girl coughs, but no water comes up. She's shivering, though her eyes are fierce. I've killed one of the beautiful, deadly kabalushka that I love, and I've nearly died, and a fever is racing through my veins, but all I can find to say to the girl is, "Keep your pony off this beach." Chapter 16. Puck. I'm still shaking and coughing by the time I get into the yard. Dove spooks at every shadow, her every moment as jerky as a puppet's. Even the sound of the gate closing behind her sends her dashing farther into the paddock, her haunches tucked underneath her. I'm lucky she's not lame. I close my eyes. I'm lucky she's not dead. It took only moments for the stallion to overpower us, and in another moment I would have been under the water for good. I lean on the gate, waiting for Dove to calm down enough to pick at her hay. She doesn't, until I'm too cold in my wet clothing. Inside, I peel off my layers and replace them with new ones, but I'm still frigid. She could have died. In the kitchen, I eat an entire orange and a piece of bread slathered with quite a bit of our precious butter. The price of an orange is so dear that normally I would have borrowed one of Mum's techniques for making each fruit go as far as possible. With a few oranges, Mum would make an orange cake, flavour butter or icing for a treat, and simmer some marmalade with the rest. If we did eat an orange just as an orange, we'd share the sections among us. But I eat the entire thing, and by the time I get to the end of it, I've stopped shivering. My head still thuds dully from where the kabalushka's knee hit it. I suck on my index finger to get the last of the orange flavour, but all I taste is salt from the ocean, which makes me even more irritable. My first day on the beach with Dove, and all I have to show for it is sand in every crevice of my skin and a kick in the head. I couldn't even make it one day without being rescued. I keep trying to put Sean Kendrick out of my head, but my mind keeps conjuring up images of his sharp face and the sound of his voice made hoarse by swallowing the sea. And every time I relive the moment, my face flushes hot with embarrassment again. I run a hand over my forehead, which is gritty with salt, and sigh a long, shuddering breath. Keep your pony off this beach. I want to give up. I'm doing all this just to win a few bare weeks with Gabriel on the island, and for what purpose? I haven't seen a hair on his head since I announced I was racing. My plan seems suddenly foolish, so I'm going to make an idiot of myself in front of the entire island and possibly get myself and Dove killed for a brother who can't be bothered to come home anyway. The idea of throwing in the towel is simultaneously relieving and discomfiting. I can't bear the idea of going back to the beach, but I can't even imagine telling Gabe that I changed my mind. It's hard to think that I have enough pride left to damage, but there it is. There's a knock on the door. I don't have any time to make my hair look better. Actually, I don't think there is a way to make it better. It has that greasy, thick feeling of hair bathed in salt water. My heart feels leaden inside me. I can't think of anyone The door opens and it's Benjamin Malvern. I know it's Benjamin Malvern because there's a signed photo of him on the wall behind the bar at the Black-Eyed Girl. I once asked Dad why it was there, and he says that was because Benjamin Malvern had given a lot of money to the pub so it could open. But I still didn't see why that was a good reason to have someone's signature on your wall. Gabriel Connolly here? Malvern asks as he comes into the kitchen. I'm left, holding the door open. The richest man on Thisbe stands in our house with his arms crossed, his gaze shifting from a cluttered kitchen counter to the collapsed pile of wood and peat by the sitting-room fireplace, to the saddle I've perched on the back of Dad's armchair. He wears a V-necked wool sweater and a tie. He's got grey hair and is not good-looking. He smells nice, which I resent. I don't close the door. It seems like closing the door would be like saying that I invited him in, and I didn't. Not at present, I say. Ah, says Malvern. He's still looking around. And you're the sister? Kate Connolly, I clarify, with as many bristles as I can manage. Yes. I think we should have some tea. He sits at our table. "Mr. Malvern," I start sternly. "Good, you know who I am. That saves us some trouble. Now, I wouldn't presume to tell you your business, but it's cold out there, and an open door makes a very poor windbreak." I shut it. I shut my mouth as well. I start to make some tea. I'm equal parts offended and curious. "What brings you this way?" I ask. I'm unhappy about how polite I sound. His eyes were on my saddle, but he shifts them to me when I speak. I'm intimidated by them, a little. The rest of him looks like a moneyed old man, but his eyes are clever. "Unpleasant business," but he says it pleasantly. "I would have thought that you have people to do your unpleasant business for you," I say, and feel cheeky. "Sugar or milk?" "Butter, milk, and salt, please." I turn to Malvern, sure I'll see humour on his face, but there isn't any. I'm not sure, now that I think of it, that it's a face I could imagine humour on. It's more like a face I can imagine on a pound note. I hand him his cup of tea, a salt shaker, and our little butter bowl. Sitting down with the milk jug opposite, I watch him slice a small piece of butter into his tea, add a healthy dose of salt, and top it all up with milk before stirring it thoroughly. The liquid has a froth on it. It looks like something I saw come out from under a cow once. I don't think that he'll drink it, but he does. Malvern braces his fingers on the edge of his teacup. "Is that your pony outside?" "Horse," I say. "She's 15 hands." You'd get better performance out of her with better food," Malvern tells me. "Switch her from that poor hay and she'd have more energy. Less of a hay belly." Of course she'd have more energy on better hay and grain. I'd have more energy if I was eating something besides beans and apple cake too, but we're both going without better for the same reason. We drink our tea. I think about Finn coming home right now and finding Malvern at our kitchen table. I sweep some crumbs into a pyramid behind the butter bowl. "So your parents are dead," Benjamin Malvern says. I set my teacup down. "Mr. Malvern!" "I know the story already," he interrupts me. "I don't want to talk about that. I want to know what comes after the story. What are you three, it is 3, isn't it, doing with yourselves?" I try to imagine how my parents would handle this situation. They were unfailingly polite and private. I am good at one of those things. Uncomfortably, I say, "We're getting along. Gabe works at the hotel. Finn and I do odd jobs, paint things for tourists." "Making enough for tea," Malvern says, but his eyes are on the pantry door. I know he saw its lack of contents when I took out the butter bowl. "We're getting along," I repeat. Malvern swallows the last of his tea. How he's managed to drink that concoction so fast and without holding his nose is beyond me, and rests his crossed arms on the table. He leans towards me, so I smell his cologne. "I am here to evict you." For a moment it doesn't mean anything, and then I scramble to my feet. My head pounds like the surf where the water horse struck it. I keep replaying that sentence. He continues, "No one has made payments on this house for a year, and I wanted to see who lived here. I wanted to see your faces when I told you." I think, just then, that in an island populated by monsters, he's more monstrous than any. My tongue takes a long time to unstick. "I thought the house was paid for. I didn't know." "Gabriel Connolly knew better, and has for quite a while," Malvern says. His voice is calm. He's watching my reaction carefully. I cannot believe that I've served him tea. I look at him and smash my lips together. I want to be sure I don't say something I will regret. I am struck more than anything by the sense of betrayal, that Gabe knew that we were living in a ticking time bomb and didn't tell us. Finally I manage, "And what is it that you see in my face right now? Is it what you came to see?" It comes out like a challenge, but Malvern seems unflustered. He just nods a little. Yes, I think so. Now tell me this. What are you and your brothers willing to do to save this house?" There was a problem with dogfighting on the island a few years back. Bored, drunk fishermen raised island dogs to tear each other's faces off. I feel like one of those dogs now. Malvern has thrown me into the pit and is now peering over the side to see what I will do. He wants to see if I will retreat, or if there's fight in me. I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing me give up. My future crystallizes suddenly. "Give me 3 weeks," I say. Malvern doesn't dance around the point. "After the races." I wonder if he's thinking that it's crazy that a girl like me is riding in the races, and that there's no point waiting until the end of the month because there will be no money because I will be dead last or just plain dead. "Keep your pony off this beach." I just nod. "You don't stand a chance," Malvern says, but without malice. "On that pony? Why her?" "Horse, I think. The Kabalushka killed my parents. I'm not going to dishonour them by riding one of the water horses." Malvern doesn't smile, but his eyebrows lighten like he's considering it. "That's noble. It's not because no one would give you a chance on one of the Kabul." I had a chance to be a fifth, I shoot back. I chose not to. Malvern considers all this. There's only real money if you win. I know, I say. And you really expect me to put this off on the idea that you and that island pony will cross that line before everyone else? I look at his silly teacup with his silly tea in it. Wasn't regular tea interesting enough? Who drank their tea with butter and salt? Nobody but bored old men who ran their islands like a chess game. I say, I think you're interested to see what will happen, and you've already waited 12 months. Malvern pushes his chair back and stands up. From his pocket he takes out a piece of paper, unfolds it, and lays it on the table. It's an official document. I recognize his signature at the bottom. My father's too. He says, I'm not a generous person, Kate Connolly. I don't answer. We regard each other. He pushes the document across the table with 2 fingers. Show that to your older brother. I'll be back to collect it when you're dead. Chapter 17. Sean. They're all afraid. I sit in a boat half-turned watching my charge. The boat has the words black as the sea painted in white on its black hull. Behind it swims Fundamental, a bay colt full of promise and promises, a sport horse colt but poised to sell for hundreds on the mainland. One of the colts I'm sure Malvern means to tempt George Holly with. Fundamental's coat is turned dark by the water. He snorts out water and breath every few strokes but shows no sign of tiring. Boat and horse make their slow way across the sheltered cove. The cliffs here are slanted, like a child shoved them over, and they block most of the wind and all of the waves. The sound of the boat's motor slaps back at me. Normally, I would find this ordinary training a bitter drink during race month, but after the strange morning, I'm relieved to have a few moments to sit and let my mind work over events. I still cannot imagine what that girl was thinking. I glance up to the mouth of the cove. One of the new men, Daly, stands watch. With the clatter of the boat's motor and the ripple of Fundamental's breaths, I am unable to keep an eye out for hunting kabalushka. The cove is easy to protect, however. Its narrow mouth means that one can keep watch while the other trains. Swimming is such a low-impact way to build strength that it's worth the risk. Daly has a shotgun, which won't do much, but he also has a set of lungs which should give me enough time to get Fundamental out of the water. Daly is from the mainland, and he's young and nervous. I prefer nervous to cocky. He needs to be my eyes, and my eyes would be fixed on that narrow passage into the cove. Fundamental keeps swimming. I was there when he was born, just a collection of knobby joints and massive eyes. He doesn't look at me as he swims. Behind the boat, swimming is his sole purpose. He has enough Kapalushka blood in him to lend him a single-mindedness. I have to watch him as closely as Daly watches the entrance to the cove. Fundamental would swim until he sank. Tomorrow, Malvern will want me to assign Mutt a horse. Every year on the 3rd day he asks me to decide, and every year I am afraid he will ask me to put Mutt on Corr. I cannot bear the thought of it. Fundamental shakes his head as if to unstick his wet mane from his neck. I lean to make certain that he's not tiring. Exercising in the water is lower impact than on land, but I don't want him exhausted. I was told buyers are coming to look at him tomorrow. I feel disquieted. I'm not certain why. If it's because of the girl interrupting the routine I followed for years, or if it's because of Mutt's piss in my boots, or if it's because, as we make our way back across the cove, the water level against the cliffs appears slightly wrong to me. Too high, perhaps. The sky is bright and populated with fluffy clouds. If there's to be a storm, it's days away. But I cannot settle. Kendrick! Kendrick! My name, a shout made thin by the boat motor. I have seconds to see it. Daly is standing on the small crescent beach by the boat slip, far from the cove's entrance. I don't have time to think about why he's moved. The shout is his. There's a silhouette at the point of the cove where Daly had been. Mutt Malvern, just watching me. No, watching a point in the water just before me. A slight drop in the water only 30 feet from us. I know that dip, that unnatural crevice into the sea. It looks like nothing, but it's what happens to the salt water when there's a massive body traveling very fast just under the surface. There's no time to make it to shore. Fundamental kicks his hind legs, his head thrown back. Then he goes under. Mutt Malvern stands motionless at the point of the cove. I dive into the water. That's the end of chapters 13 through 17. Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure that you check out the description box at the bottom of the video for your discussion questions for this section. We will see you next time.